I want to talk to you for a couple moments about the dues review process that we have underway. And I know that some of you have been following this pretty carefully and some of you are not as aware. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the dues, though I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. What I really want to talk to you about today is the process that we're underway. Now, when I became the president of PBS, I can't believe that it's been 5 years. It was 5 years ago I stood on the stage. This is the first conference that I attended when I was appointed president of PBS. I think I've aged about 40. But the one thing that I heard consistently, and for those of you who remember those first couple of years in this job, I was on the road a lot. I visited a lot of stations and talked to a lot of general managers and talked to a lot of station people and boards and so forth. Everywhere I went, people pulled me aside and said, you know, that dues formula is broken. You better do something about it. So we started internally at PBS thinking about, okay, if we're serious about doing this, because I just want to give you a little history. As you know, some years back, I think maybe 10 years ago, I remember I was at NET at the time, there was an attempt to start to look at the dues process. A lot of energy went into it, and at the 11th hour, the system wasn't fully sure they wanted to go down the path, and so it stopped. And so, and that process was a little bit of tinkering around the edges. It wasn't a real look at the formula. And so we decided if we were going to do it, we would be serious about it. So we first, through our Station Services Committee, really took a big step back and looked at some of the policies and that really bind us together as a system and as a community. And so as that process started to wind down, we pulled together some members of our board, a number of general managers, as well as members of the board who have served on public television boards. And so, as some of you know from our governance process, we went through a series of recommendations on how our board is structured. So it's, you know, suddenly half of our board is general managers, and the other half are sort of lay directors. But we really look for people that have had experience in public broadcasting to bring onto the board because we're complicated, and it's helpful to have people that understand the system from the inside. So we pulled together a team, and they started working, and we started from the very beginning. We did pull the whole formula apart, and it is it's an ugly thing, I have to tell you. And we tried to really focus on what are some of the key principles that would help the system itself have a formula that people can understand, because believe me, you can't understand the current formula. You know, it's, well, I can explain it to you, but it's averaged over 3 years, and by the time you finish, you're looking at data that sometimes is 3 or 4 or 5 years old that has no bearing to the current state of where your station is right now. And so, and then it's been further complicated by the fact that over the last 4 years, we've either capped or frozen dues. And so everyone is sort of in this sort of like an amber period of where they were 4 or 5 years ago in terms of their station performance. So something's got to give. We're using old population data in the formula that we're currently using, which is not only old census data, but it's also using the Outlook footprint. So it's kind of a mess. So what the committee did is they went through, they tried to figure out, okay, how can we really simplify this? What are some of the key factors we should think about? And they ran lots of models, and they came up with a recommendation that was shared out a few weeks ago. Now, let me please underscore, this is not the formula. This is the committee's recommendation of a formula. And so we sent it out to the system so that you could have input to let us know what you think. And we know that some of you have concerns about the population. They have concerns about how we balance between population and NFFS and so forth. It's great that you have concerns. That's what we were asking for. We wanted you to let us know what you thought worked for you or didn't work for you. And so all of that information, and we've gotten a lot of it. A lot of you have participated in the webinars. A lot of you have taken advantage of calling our team or calling members of the PBS board who are your lay representatives or board representatives to talk about the formula. The committee's actually meeting tomorrow in DC. We're taking all the feedback that we've gotten from you. They're going to look at what we currently have. I am certain they're going to make some changes to what we've recommended, or at least some tweaks, because we've gotten really good feedback. There are pieces of it that seem to hit the mark. There are pieces of it that we want to look at some other opportunities. And then coming out of that, we will have opportunity for more comment. So I think that there's a lot of people that somehow are under the impression that this is a train that's left the station and is gone. And that's not the case. And so I just want you to know that that's the process we're on. The dues committee is not making any recommendations to the PBS board for consideration until we feel we have something that's really going to work. Now, I have to add, for those of you that have been in the system for a long time, you could probably guess we will probably end up with something that's not going to please 100% of the stations. We do nothing that pleases 100% of the stations, but we don't want to do anything that's going to be harmful to any stations. And so we are very sensitive to the fact that we are living in tough economic times. So the last part that I will tell you is that by the time we come up with a formula that we feel works and that makes sense and that is fair and equitable, we will then figure out a way of how to implement it that will enable us to do this over multiple years so that whatever changes happen, the impact on any individual station will be minimized. Okay? So I hope that is helpful and clear so that you know what the process that we're following is. And I just have to say that the person that I think really has stood up and done more than his fair share is John King. John King, and why he agreed to chair this task force, I can't tell you. But I always had my suspicions that he had a little bit of a masochistic piece of it. But he has really done an extraordinary job in making sure that we are not only going through a good process with in looking at the various dues options, but he is tirelessly committed to making sure that we really hear from the system. So that's where we are with the dues, and much more to follow as we move forward. I guess the last thing that I just want to comment on is the work that I've been engaged in called Funding the Vision. Funding the Vision is a project, and I know Steve Bass is here somewhere, and he was involved in the first Funding the Vision when he was a young employee at PBS within the development department. And we are working with a group of people, largely people from outside of public broadcasting, to help us look at what are the opportunities that we should be considering both at the station level, and are there opportunities that we can scale at the national level on behalf of stations that could help us bring new resources into public broadcasting. And we've gotten a group of really wonderfully talented and interesting people together. People including the CMO from Citibank, people including the founder of Global Giving, which has done some interesting work, one of the pioneers in microloans and online, including the former head of the Philanthropy Center at Indiana University, including the program officer at Carnegie, who oversees all of the media grants. And Carnegie is one of the legacy foundations that were part of the establishment of public broadcasting. Someone who runs one of the community foundations, because I'm interested in figuring out ways to help stations across the country build deeper partnerships with community foundations, perhaps around some bigger initiatives. We have two GMs that are part of the process, Malcolm Brett and Tom Axtell. We had a meeting right before the holidays, and we were invited a number of members of our station advisory group who've been also working with us, who are within the development community, as well as some additional GMs like Cliff Keel. And we had, I think, a really great discussion around some of the work that we're doing. I'll give you an example of where I think we as a system need to be thinking a little differently. Some general managers aren't as convinced about the commitment that we have to kids and education because they don't see how it actually comes and helps their bottom line. I think that we should be doing a better job of trying to figure out how to connect those dots. Because it's amazing to me that here we have, in the broadcast world, such huge success with our PBS Kids service. We know that we're changing the lives of millions of children across the country. And the PBSKids.org work is through the roof. We're up to 110 million video streams a month. We have people like Disney looking looking over their shoulder, wondering what the hell happened. That somehow this little upstart PBS service, which has invested a fraction of the money that they've invested in online, is eating their lunch in terms of kids' involvement and engagement. We somehow need to be doing a better job of telling that story at the local level and really being able to help you do that. I think that there are tools that we can build to help you in talking to corporate underwriters, in going out into the community and talking about philanthropy, and perhaps there are partnerships that we should be building to help us not only connect deeper within our communities, but to also bring resources in. This is something that I think we can work on together. And so I'm very excited about the work that Funding the Vision has started. And our plan is by the time we get to the annual meeting in May, we'll have some very specific activities that will come out of that project, so that it is not just a group of people that have spent some interesting discussion sitting around a table talking about the potential for the future, but a real game plan of some specifics that we can do that can help you at the local level. So, so that's all my comments for this morning. I just want to say I am very, it was funny flying into Nashville yesterday because I thought back to 5 years ago and what I thought my time at PBS was going to be like. And as you might guess, this has been a different 5 years than I would have guessed. But I have to say that although there are moments that are challenging, I feel so very blessed to have an opportunity to work alongside of each and every one of you. And I feel that way when I come from a trip like Press Here, of course, where I see our work in front of people who are critics. Critics being critical, you know, so they're not always the people that just love everything we do. But more importantly, it's not about experiences like the ones that we had in Los Angeles this week. It's because I've had the joy of traveling around the country and visiting with so many of you and seeing the work that you do firsthand. But more importantly, talking to people in your communities and hearing stories about how the work that we do really changes lives. And how many people have the privilege of working in a field where we really do make a profound difference. And that's why the fight on Capitol Hill is so absolutely critical. Because it's not about preserving something that employs us. It's not about preserving something that's had this great legacy. It's about preserving an institution that is indeed an integral part of the fabric of this country. And people are counting on us to make sure that not only it's preserved, but that it is polished and burnished and expanded. Because when you think about the potential of what we can do with the tools at our hands, with the great creative talent that we're able to bring into public broadcasting, and now the technology, both for television and online and other things, that really enables us to connect our world. That, to me, is great work. And we are so blessed, all of us, that we have the opportunity to do that work each and every day. Thank you so very much.